Hi guys. It is my honor and my pleasure to invite our next speaker to the stage. He is actually the only other person that looks better in this shirt with the word organizer on it than I do. Hard to imagine, but he actually does. He is from Swampscott, Massachusetts, and in fact, he was sought out by a recruiter for the show Beauty and the Geek. and that's Sloan. And that's Sloan. Zach Freeman.
They were short on beauties. So, and those lights aren't intense. Okay, this is a little easier. So there are two things that I've been my entire life, and that is insecure and a workaholic. And that's just kind of how it goes. And I was thinking about, what I was going to talk about tonight, and I was reflecting on some of these vivid memories that sort of popped up as I was thinking about how to describe myself to the Sloan community. And I remember really vividly, I lived in a fraternity in college, and we threw a lot of really fun parties, and they were crazy, and they lasted, Saturday 8 to whatever, something like that. And I would come back from the library in like business casual with, I don't know why, a briefcase. And I would like, there's always like the two bros on the door, and you up nod to the bros with your briefcase. Like in your house, I suppose they had to let me in. And then like, you keep walking to go into like the cooler upper stair area where like the drinks are. And like again, you're like walking through the dance floor in your thing. And I just remember thinking like, why am I not out there? Like, why am I, what am I getting by doing this? And I don't know that I knew or why I was doing it, honestly. And I got a job after school, and there were a bunch of hours involved, like probably a lot of people, and you work real hard, and the way they pay you off, or one of the ways is they let you buy dinner on them, right? Like that's the hook at the recruiting fair, which is like a 21-year-old really sold me. And, so what we used to do was like 3 or 4 analysts, we'd go down to the restaurant. It was right outside our building in Chicago, and we'd order takeout so that we could like get outside, at 7. And I remember, again, really vividly, like walking into the restaurant night after night at 7 on, Monday, Thursday, Friday, and just seeing all these people like laughing and having a great time. And, you'd sort of stand there and wait for the woman to bring the food out, or she'd have it already. And you take it, and you like walk back with the analyst past these other people, and I can't tell you why I was doing it, but it was just part of my life. And I don't really think I ever thought about it as a choice. It was just sort of how I was living. And and I remember in college, I thought I had really bad acne, who knows? And you can't be an objective judge of something like that, I feel like, for yourself. And I remember looking in the mirror, some days I'd wake up like full schedule, ready to go, and I'm 100% serious, and I'd look in the mirror and I'd just be like, okay, I'm not going out today. Like I can't do it. Like I just don't, people are not gonna like this, like I just can't. And I remember, I have not really a lot planned to tell you about, but just something that's coming to my mind is, I remember somebody who was super socially popular kind of observing me talking to like 1 or 2 people I felt comfortable with. And I was talking really animatedly, and then she pulled me aside after, and she was like, oh, so you can talk, you just need to talk to like your people. And I don't, in retrospect, it was just like, I don't know how I came off, And so these things, I can tell you a million stories about sort of this insecurity and being a workaholic. And I think with a little distance, although probably not that much, or any, what that's really about for me, and I can only speak for myself, it's about loneliness. And I don't know, it's like a chicken and an egg thing, but you're either lonely because you're working all the time and afraid to interact with people, or you're afraid to interact with people and working all the time, so you're lonely. But I can't say I ever made a distinction or thought about it. And, it's tough. And one day I started dating, I started dating this woman named Emma, who I'd gone to school with. And, to think about some of the things that she had to get through just to be with me. I remember I was working so many hours, but to spend time together, she would come to the office that I was working in and sit next to me from 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. with a book in a relatively small space with whitewashed walls and angry fluorescent lighting, just sitting there while I had Excel open, just muttering to myself. And she would sit there just to be with me, and just so we could exchange the occasional hello, or just, man, this sucks, doesn't it? Just that's not. I don't know that I have the strength or the fortitude to do that, or that I was capable of the love and kind of the force of will to feel that connected to somebody to do that. But I think, she did, fortunately for me. And, it's also, as somebody who's insecure, I think it's hard to connect to people, because, at least for me, I was always wondering, are they still gonna like me tomorrow? I remember I dated a woman in college who I thought was really attractive, and she was a little shy, and then she felt a lot more comfortable just after a couple months, just talking to people. And I remember almost confronting her a little bit, trying to be casual about was she still gonna like me? Were we still gonna date? And she looked at me and she was like, do you know how insulting that is, that you would sort of question, that you would question me that much, that I would that I would drop you just because you think I've changed. And it was awful, and I just came from inside of me, and I don't know from where, really. And so anyway, this woman, Emma, kind of fought through a lot of this stuff. And, we got closer, and I met her parents, and, I was looking at business schools, and, that's the other problem with being a workaholic, is that you move, and it's on your schedule, and I'm sure, as all of you as MBAs are going to think about, you move once for the MBA, you might move again for the internship, you move back when the internship's done, and you move again when the MBA is over. And then if you're like me and you're a masochist, and you debate more school down the road, then you think about doing all that again. And you just think about the kind of person who's willing to put up with that, and to bear that cost with you. Especially if we weren't, engaged or anything, it was love in a way that I don't think I understood. And I think that's what this story is about, is understanding for me kind of what love meant, and how I came to be able to feel it. And, I got into Sloan, and I got into Dartmouth. And I remember when we were talking about where to go, Dartmouth is for those of you who haven't been there, it's a wonderful school, but it's in the middle of nowhere. And taking a significant other there, who doesn't have a job there, who doesn't have friends there, it's a small town, if you want to go to a show, or even to a different restaurant 3 times in a month, it's not trivial. And I remember when we were early in our relationship, I mentioned that Dartmouth, was on my set of options, and I remember I was saying, I just want you to know that I can't do long distance. It's not something that I know that about myself. And so if you get into Dartmouth and you go, I'm not sure, I think we should talk about that. And I got in, or maybe I was still interviewing, and I was booking a flight, and I was talking to her about, we were living together, I think, at that point. I was talking to her about the logistics of it, and here's the weekend I was thinking, and she said, oh, could you let me know, this is a couple months later, she said, could you let me know which weekend you're going to go? And I said, why? And she said, well, I'd really like to book a flight with you, and see if I would like to go. And, I think it hit me in that moment, that she loved me. And I didn't know exactly what to feel back, because I think I buried the things I cared about were being successful, or just occupying myself, and not being insecure. And I wish, she came, I proposed to her, which was wonderful, and the second best day of my life so far. And, I think what basically happened is, I wish there was some moment, I guess, where I could tell you that I changed, or that I suddenly felt this flowering of some joyous emotion that you see in the movies. And I can't, and I thought about it really hard so that I could talk about it up here, and I can't. And I think what it was this kind of gradual transfer of strength and will from one person to another. And she was the one who taught me that, if I do the dishes one night, or if she does the dishes one night, I guess, because she did the dishes a lot when I was working every night, weekends. She goes, our relationship isn't transactional. So if you want, I'll just do the dishes the next night. And it wasn't like she, it's a small thing, but it really was love. And it really wasn't like anything else I had felt. So anyway, the point of all this is that I think gradually I sort of became a little more comfortable with myself, and I didn't necessarily feel the need to work all the time. And the wedding, so we got married. Yeah, she's over there. She's the hot one. One of the many beautiful women on that side. One of the many beautiful women on that side, and the whole room. Okay. The geek, really. So anyway, the point of all this is that, I had a really tough summer this summer coming up to the wedding. The wedding was late August, and I was interning, and I was really uncomfortable with the internship, and it was a tech company, and they love to ply you with food. And one of my friends had gotten married the year before, and he talked incessantly about the insanity workout, and about how he had lost 20 pounds of fat and gained 20 pounds of muscle, and was in the best shape of his life on his wedding day, and about how it was awesome, and he was going to look at those pictures for 1,000 years. And it's like aliens, when they take over the earth, they're going to look at those pictures and be like, that dude's ripped. And I just did not have that experience. A couple of my roommates over the summer are here, and they could tell you I was eating multiple burritos a night. So I'm just really stressed and just not aware of how to handle it, or just couldn't handle it. So I started gaining weight. And I think on my wedding day, I was in probably the worst shape of my life. I don't know, I could ask Emma, she's going to be too nice, but I could ask, my roommate, they would say for sure. So anyway, the point of all this is, the magical thing for me was that on that day, so that was the best day of my life. The engagement was the second best day. That was the best day. And I did not feel self-conscious. And I didn't even think about it. And I felt wonderful. And I felt beautiful. And I felt, happy. And we had planned this elaborate dance, because we both like to dance. We'd taken multiple hours of dance every week in a row for almost 3 months. And I forgot it. Literally a minute in, 30 seconds in. And I knew kind of the story, a couple of moments I wanted to get to, and so I sort of fought through it. And I think I didn't care. And it was wonderful. And I wasn't insecure about it. And I when we were dancing, she and I were in the middle of the dance floor, and everybody was looking at us, and I did the thing where they're all clapping, waiting for somebody to get in the middle of the dance floor. And I went in the middle of the dance floor, which I never do. And I don't know how anyone does it. It's terrifying. But I did it, and everybody kept clapping. And that was the good moment. So anyway, I've talked way too long. And I think, the point of all of this for me is just that I couldn't tell you even now really what love feels like for me, but I do know that I have it, and that someone else helped me get it, and that loneliness that was so core to my being is gone. And I can't remember it. It's just gone. And I'm incredibly lucky and incredibly in love. And yeah, that's my story. Thank you.